people want to feel seen, and managers need to see work getting done. And I think overall people are just less seen, and that often makes people feel less successful. And we've seen this burnout epidemic that's happened as a result of the pandemic. And some of it is, yes, people are working harder. They don't have a line between work and play. But I actually think a lot of this because people need to feel successful to not burn out.
Welcome to Scale Your Saas, the podcast that gives you proven techniques and formulas for boosting your revenue and achieving your dream exit. Brought to you by a guy who's done just that multiple times. Here's your host, Matt Wolach.
Hello, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you here. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Matt Wolach, and our goal here is to help you scale your SaaS so you can achieve the dream exit that you're looking for. And I'm elated to be talking to Pojjal Ghatak. Projjal, how you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm super excited for you to be here. Let me tell everybody who you are, Projjal. So Projjal is the CEO and founder at OnLoop. He founded OnLoop in 2020 to create a category called collaborative team development to fundamentally reinvent how hybrid teams are assessed and developed. OnLoop helps teams drive an impactful loop of regular reflection, feedback, and learning that managers and their teams co-create to provide powerful insights into individual and team development. They're doing some really, really cool stuff, and I can't wait to dive in. So once again, Projjal, thanks for coming on the show.
No, thank you. How have you been?
I've been good. Been super busy. How about you?
Same. So it's 10 p.m. in Singapore. So I try and operate a global business out of Asia. So that means you do a day shift and then you do a mini night shift after. So this is smack in the middle of that night shift.
I love it. Well, I run a business with people in many different countries. About 3 different countries right now is where our team is. And we service people in about 30 plus different countries. So I understand having different hours. In fact, for you, it's 10 p.m. For me, it's 7 a.m. here in Arizona. It's kind of the way it is today, a global world, isn't it?
I know. And this global hybrid future is very exciting. And the pandemic sort of accelerated it. And that will mean that we'll have to reinvent a bunch of stuff to make it work. But it levels the playing field in terms of talent around the world and opportunities they have. We were just chatting about folks in the Philippines and just how amazing talent is. And, I had the privilege of working there for a while, and my wife grew up there. And so we try and hire folks from there as much as we can. And it's amazing to see people who just have so much potential now find opportunity and not having to sort of travel around the world and relocate to find the best jobs. They can just find that where they are. And we have COVID-19 to thank to accelerate that in many ways. And that's been one of the permanent silver linings coming out of this pandemic.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how something really, really bad can create some good things. And I agree. There's a lot of stuff that has come out of that's been good. And that's one of it. And I can tell you my team, they're all over the world, like I mentioned, and they are awesome. They're like family to me, and we're very close, and they do some amazing stuff. It's pretty cool what can happen.
No, for sure. And, we started in April 2020 when the world shut down. So we've been global and distributed right from day zero. I don't think there are a lot of actually VC-backed tech companies that have been that way right from infancy. And so at some point, someone might want to study that and understand good, bad, and ugly of teams starting out that way. But we had a very different experience of never having been a pre-pandemic company. And so we only know remote and hybrid as OnLoop.
Well, the same. So my coaching company started in March of 2020. So right then as well. So it's been no different. So it's kind of fun how it happens. But I want to hear what gave you this idea to start OnLoop. How'd that come about?
Yeah, no, OnLoop was born from personal pain, to be honest. Right before starting the company, I'd spent 3.5 years at Uber in a variety of roles. Prior to that, in finance and management consulting. And throughout my career, the importance of managing teams was just front and center all the time. And people development is such a huge piece of what we do as leaders. But I was very, very underwhelmed by the quality of tooling, by the quality of processes that me and my team were subject to, both from a recruiting perspective, from a learning perspective, from a performance management perspective. And frankly, I just had a lot of anger and disdain for how things were run. And I didn't necessarily know when we started out what the answer would look like. But the problems were very clear. And the first problem we decided to tackle was the performance review and performance management process that I was subject to for many years as a leader, which just felt like a backwards process that took a ton of time and yielded minimal to no benefit for the people going through it. And when a billion knowledge workers go through something day in, day out and hate it, there's an opportunity there to go build something that's fundamentally better. And so, that's really how we started. And it's been an amazing journey since.
Yeah, it's so true. I want to talk about that, this shift that has happened. We talked about it earlier. What has that meant? Like, how has that changed business? How has that changed work and work habits? What have you seen from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot there, right, to uncover. But one of the things that we end up talking a lot about and see a lot with our customers is just this visibility and clarity gap that's got created because people have gone hybrid. And so, we had built an entire tech stack to largely enable and support in-person work. And when we build products, so we build products for people to communicate and collaborate remotely. We build products to project manage at a task level, like Notion or Asana. But managers kind of kept tabs on, hey, were teams on track on an everyday basis, kind of by physical osmosis. And so you could get by with point-in-time updates on what was going on and feedback people got from a tooling perspective, because a lot of that happened informally day to day. That loop has completely gone away. And as a result, there is a massive anxiety both on the leader side as well as the employee side. And you obviously have seen, as we've gone into more recessionary environment where leaders have been asking people to come back to the office. A lot of that is driven by just paranoia and anxiety about productivity. And actually, Microsoft ran this study about a couple of months ago, and they call it the productivity paranoia, which is a great phrase, where 87% of employees think they're being productive, but 12% of leaders think their teams are productive. And there's a massive gap there. And the way leaders are trying to fill that gap is by saying, come back to the office. And I don't think that solves the problem. I think it's a temporary band-aid, which is not necessarily good for the world, and which is why we need to build technology that sort of provides that clarity. And I don't think we're ever going back to a 5-day in-person work week. I'll be very, very surprised if that becomes the outcome. But people want to feel seen, and managers need to see work getting done. And I think overall people are just less seen. And that often makes people feel less successful. And we've seen this burnout epidemic that's happened as a result of the pandemic. And some of it is, yes, people are working harder. They don't have a line between work and play. But I actually think a lot of this because people need to feel successful to not burn out. And there are times when I've worked 16 hours a day, but I felt successful and I haven't burnt out. And there are times where I worked lesser and I may not see, although I did it and I might burn out. So I think the diagnosis needs to be very clear around these things to treat them right.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well said. So what's the fix? How should businesses approach team development and managing their teams so that they can create excellence?
It's really about building high fidelity feedback loops. And at a basal level, it's understanding how people are feeling. At a secondary level, it's knowing that people have clarity on what they're working towards, so what their goals are. At a tertiary level, receiving enough feedback to have a very clear sense of where your superpowers are, where your blind spots are, so that you can hone one and mitigate for the other. And finally, take action to get better. And that can be through coaching, that can be through consuming content, and really all the things that a great manager does in person on a consistent basis. And in our case, we try and sort of augment teams with a platform that allows that to happen on a much more consistent basis, so that managers have a good sense of where to intervene. And people are very quick to blame one side versus the other, or employees are lazy, or managers don't care, or leaders are terrible people. I don't think any of them is true, right? I think everybody's fundamentally operating from what they know and what they feel aware of, and if we increase the amount of information that flows through them without adding a ton of burden, we're going to build more aligned organizations, and organizations just calmer, and can deal with sort of varying work styles and varying work arrangements.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And you mentioned earlier annual reviews. Should annual reviews, it feels like we're always taught growing up as leaders, as we're coming up the chain, make sure you're doing annual reviews with your team. Should that still be a thing, or should we ditch it and do feedback other way? What should happen?
Before I answer that, have you spent much time with ChatGPT?
Not yet. I've seen all the. I'm on Twitter, so everybody's tweeting about it and this and that. I haven't popped into it myself yet.
Yeah, so we actually partnered with OpenAI in 2021 and incorporated sort of GPT-3 into our product. And what our product helps do is it takes sort of the frequent captures that people make over the course of time and then converts that into a cohesive narrative using OpenAI's technology. And so if you think about an annual review, right, and if you think about where the time goes into it, the bulk of the time goes into writing these reviews from scratch. So it tries to convert everyone in an organization into a storyteller. And often who gets promoted or who looks better is based on someone's storytelling capability and what I call eloquence bias, be it in writing or in verbal, versus the actual work that happened. And so, yes, I think, companies need annual reports. They need quarterly reports. They need semi-annual. So there are points in time that you should always check in and reflect back on what happened. But the data points that support that conversation or support that discussion should be very much accrued over time. And so what we try and do with our approach, and we call it collaborative team development, as you mentioned, is to be much more forward-looking, whereby we try and give teams a product that can help them collect snapshots of how things are going on a much more regular basis, and then use AI to help summarize that. And that summarization should be a byproduct and not the main product of how teams are developed, versus today, that review sort of becomes the forcing function. And as a result, people hate feedback. They hate goals. They hate all these things that should actually be good for you. But the way they've been implemented has made people run away from it. And that's terrible, right? And in the same way that fitness tech made losing weight cool, like Noom made working out and losing weight cool, and that's good for the world. And we're trying to sort of make goals and feedback and development and well-being cool so that people don't hate it like they've hated it for the last 40 years because they were given performance management tools to spend time in.
So is that a big undertaking? I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but from your perspective, you kind of need to re-educate the market and the world about the right way to do things instead of what has just been drilled into us over the years.
Yeah, and I'm an old school founder, an old school entrepreneur, and believe that something's been solved, then why solve it? And so I don't want to be the 10th person that builds another buy now, pay later product, or a our product in terms of the world, if you're not actually driving meaningful change, then why be an entrepreneur? And so I absolutely believe it's a huge undertaking, but it's also one that's meaningful, and that makes the long nights worth doing, right? So I agree, and which is why, for us, it's very much about encasing all of the change we're driving into a cohesive framework, and that's why we talk about CTD or collaborative team development in the same way people have talked about OKRs, or they've talked about EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System, because if you want to drive change, you need to make sure people understand it and package it. And we spend time thinking about how we sort of drive a methodology that just makes sense, and people do it. Like people move to channel-based messaging with Slack, right? And learned how to speak in channels, which must have felt weird at the beginning. Or people picked up Notion, although that product seemed foreign for people for a while. But having a Airtable or Notion that has a database built into a spreadsheet just made sense after a while. And so, we're applying a lot of what people have done for other use cases and applying it to making teams fundamentally better.
Love it. And speaking of your own company, you've been able to start OnLoop, like you mentioned at the beginning of the pandemic. You've earned some success. You've been able to grow. What were some of the best moves you guys made along the way that helped you get where you are now?
No, great question. I think one of the things that I decided pretty early on was that I wasn't trying to bootstrap the company or sort of do it on my own. And the biggest reason for that is when you build software early on, you can often make more money by providing services. And it's almost easy to sell services in the early stage of building a software company. And if you're bootstrapping, revenue matters a lot, right from day zero. And so you can sort of get distracted and move away towards services. And so ensuring that we were product focused right from the get-go meant that we did raise capital quite early on. I think that was a fairly important design choice. I think the second was when it comes to fundraising, and obviously people have horror stories about fundraising, and I will have to probably fundraise again for this company, and won't be in 2020 and 2021. So we'll see how that goes, and people claim they're the two easiest years to fundraise, and those are the only 2 years I've fundraised ever. So maybe get me back in a couple of years and see if I talk about fundraising, but. One of the things that we did was be quite public on LinkedIn on what we were building and why, and that just meant that we got a lot of interest from investors right from the get-go, and that changes the conversational dynamic. In fact, the same thing happened with customers, and a lot of our early customers came through inbound. And attracting inbound is so much more powerful than sort of driving outbound, and it just changes the dynamic of conversation. So I tell a lot of entrepreneurs to think about sort of talking about yourself enough that people are intrigued and they come to you versus you having to go to people, because it changes the dynamic of the conversation. And then the third was we took this bet on GPT-3 and generative AI to write performance reviews quite early versus other use cases, and we were sort of in a bit of a rush to announce to the world and wanted to be the first to announce it. And so I think that really paid off, and we're now in a place where everyone's talking about generative AI. We sort of successfully survived the boom and bust of all things having to be crypto and NFT to be valuable. And I'm glad we didn't get sucked into that sort of wave. And sort of staying focused on solving a problem and sort of thinking of first principles on how can we use the very best of technology we have to solve the problem at hand, I think has led us to a place where we feel well positioned to capture the opportunity. So those are the few things that come to mind.
I love it. That's great stuff, and I hope people can emulate that for their own companies. What about the other way? What were some of the things that didn't go well that you thought, oh, this is going to be great, and then it didn't work so well? What were some of those mistakes?
Yeah, I think building good product is incredibly hard, and I think a lot of first-time founders underestimate that, and specifically building amazing UX is incredibly hard. And there's a huge difference between UX design and UI design. And typically, if you're a founder, you find a designer, and you focus on how good things look and sort of, do they make you feel the right particular way? But like the intricacies of flows and how they drive habit is huge. And because we got funded quite early, we just kept building the product without thinking a whole lot on whether the UX was perfect or did the right things. And so if I do it all over again, I'd be a lot more focused on UX from the get-go. The second thing is how you build systems and actually building a prototype for something is actually really easy in the world we live in today. But if you build a prototype that works, keeping on adding additional features to it if you haven't architected right actually makes you hit a wall after a while. And
technical debt gets
correct.
Nasty.
And so the hardest thing with early stage companies is that you got to straddle the short, medium, long term game, because at some level you don't even know the long term game exists. So you can't make architecture decisions that slow you down too much, but at the same time you can't be super short term focused too. And I feel like at times we've been more short term focused than we should have been in terms of sort of tech decisions we've made. But I think I hadn't built a product company before this, and Uber was in many ways quite operational, and I was more on the upside of things. And so I've just gained a lot of appreciation of what building product looks like, and how much complexity you need to sort of hide away to build an experience that is truly magical and truly delightful. And so I feel like I'm still learning how to build a delightful product, and it's been fascinating to be down that journey, and I'm lucky to have the opportunity to make mistakes and still learn and keep moving forward.
I love that. Well, Pojjal, I love your passion. I can see you care so much about this, and you care about helping people and growing the product. It's super awesome to see that. That's one of the things I just love about talking with great entrepreneurs is just seeing that vision and the passion come together. It's really fun. I really appreciate you doing all this. What I want to ask lastly is, what advice would you have for other early stage software founders who are getting going and looking to grow?
Yeah, one of the things that I talk quite a bit about is mental agility and sort of conviction and confidence and mental fortitude. I had to definitely take that quite seriously even on this journey and make sure that when times were harder, it wasn't messing with my conviction or my confidence. And in any startup journey, there's a great book called The Founders, which talks about the PayPal mafia, and it's an amazing read for every entrepreneur, because it just talks about how even Elon Musk has been fired twice from his companies. And so, no matter how successful someone is, it's never a straight line, and it's never going to be one. But what really gets you going is that belief and that faith. And so continuing to work on physical and mental health and just psychological well-being, I think, is what carries entrepreneurs through, and is something that a lot of people neglect or get caught up into hustle culture, and that's big. And I think the second is just really understanding your support systems and your risk appetite and knowing what you can and cannot do. I had to wait till 33 or 34 to start a company, because before that in my life, I couldn't afford to not make a paycheck every month. And that was my reality. And I'm extremely privileged to have a wife who works at a big tech company and has amazing benefits for our family that allows me to take risk. And, people talk about go find your passion and that's all that matters. But I think that's a place of privilege. And we should all sort of factor in what risk we can take. And if you can take it, then do it. And this, irrespective of how it goes, there is very few things in life that are more meaningful.
I think that's extremely well said. Well, Projjal, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, we have onloop.com, so that's the easiest place to find OnLoop. There should be only one Pojjal Ghatak on LinkedIn, but and I'm G Projjal on Twitter. So please reach out and sort of share feedback or any of your thoughts.
Okay, perfect. We'll make sure we put that in the show notes as well. Pojjal, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been great.
Love being here.
Absolutely. Likewise. And everybody else out there, thank you for being here. Make sure you're subscribed to the show. You don't want to miss out on any other amazing discussions with leaders sharing about their passion and their vision like Pojjal just did. So hit that subscribe button, and then we will see you next week. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Scale Your Saas. For more help on finding great leads and closing more deals, go to mattwallach.com.